Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame football podcast on the planet. Unfortunately, that doesn't give you any advantage in trying to assess the 2024 Notre Dame football team.
That's true.
Coffee, since you whiffed the worst of us, I'm going to let you go first. But clearly, you saw some stuff in the NIU game that Ed and I didn't see, and and so it goes to show that it's just things that you didn't realize they were going to fix in 5 days.
Well, let's also point out that I failed to do my homework before the last show and did not realize that not only is Purdue picked to finish last in the Big Ten this year, they also had a bye week in there that I did not realize. I don't say that to excuse anything. I came in dead last in the prediction contest at ND Nation this week, only because, and there are still, they certainly played a lot better this week. I think the performance was a lot crisper. I think they were a lot more focused. I think the game plan, was a little bit better. I think it tried to appeal to Riley Leonard's strengths necessarily instead of his weaknesses. I think everyone overall was more focused. And while it was still the game that I'd hoped to see the previous week with a lot of snaps, opportunities for younger guys in the second half, I still did not see I still did not see a quarterback performance that leads me to believe that this team can win a playoff game in December, assuming that they can get there. There's still not a lot of accuracies. And as much as Steve Angeli, I liked in general how he did, but those 2 sacks he took were just absolutely terrible. I mean, you can't take those. I mean, granted, it wasn't a meaningful game situation, but that's just not. You can't roll that way. So
that could be some experience there. I mean, he threw a tight spiral, so let's give him that.
I thought he could zip on the passes and everything, and overall a much better performance. I think it speaks to the coaching staff's and Marcus Freeman's ability to have a handle on the culture of the team, because a loss like last week could have very easily sent this team into a spiral, but obviously it did not. Everyone played better, and hopefully that carries forward.
They did. They played at a high level. We talked about that last week, that I kind of felt like Freeman would put this on his back, get everybody in the team bought into him. It's us against the world. We're going to go prove to the world we're a much better football team than we showed last weekend. They did it, and they executed at a high level. But having said that, there were some things that you saw that are a little bit of a concern. However, I think back to your point, Ed, in that you've kind of felt like Denbrock got kind of cute against NIU. He certainly didn't get cute against Purdue. And some of what we saw was a heavy dose of Riley Leonard's ability to run the football and to run it in a way that produces results. I mean, he can make guys miss. He can break tackles, and he's got a speed to him that makes him kind of dangerous as a threat. And I think the question now is, can he put up enough passing numbers to complement that running threat that make us a viable offense? That's the big question at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it was really pretty funny to hear everybody jump all over the Angeli train, when he threw the nice ball right out of the bat, right when he came in. I can't remember was it to Harrison or but it was a really nice throw. He laid it right in there. I mean, the fact of the matter is Leonard did the same thing, except Greathouse dropped his. I mean, that was a beautiful throw down the field.
That was a great throw.
So, I think what we're seeing is a couple things. Number one, Riley Leonard's going to play until his health doesn't permit him to, or his performance is so poor that there's no other choice and they're in danger of losing another game for a couple of reasons. Number one, he does give you another dimension. I mean, obviously he showed that on Saturday against a really poor team, but still, he's comfortable running the ball and is pretty good at it. Number two, we have to remember we're in an era now where you're not going to not play the guy you're given $1 million plus to. I mean, the people that put up that money don't do it with the intent of seeing their high-priced talent sitting on the bench or standing on the sidelines with a clipboard. So there's new pressures on coaches in terms of playing guys over certain guys, both to sort of justify their own recruiting and their own selections and their own decisions, but also to make those that fund these acquisitions happy to a degree. And then third, I think, I do have the feeling that we have not seen Riley Leonard's best game yet, and probably won't for a while. I mean, he has not played a whole hell of a lot of football as a quarterback. Not much more than Steve Angeli, frankly, and certainly not with a receiving core that he just kind of got to know over the summer. He didn't really play with them that much, in the spring, of course, and in the first part of the summer. Let's face it. I mean, if Notre Dame loses a game the rest of the year, it's probably, you're probably gonna be able to trace it back to the fact that they're not able to move the football on the ground or through the air, because the injuries that they suffered on Saturday are significant. They're fortunate that they have a couple of quote unquote veterans who could step into those shoes, but these aren't, Craig and Schroth aren't going to be the last two guys that get hurt this year. Somebody else is probably going to go down. It just seems like it's one of those years. So I think we should just be sort of realistic about the fact that, we're going to ride and die with Riley Leonard this year, and hope that he continues to show improvement and takes steps every week. Because I do think that we have, as Evans sort of comes back into play, it was good to see Reardon and Flanagan do something and gain a little confidence, because our tight end play was pretty poor the first couple of weeks. So not poor, but just nothing, but certainly nondescript, which, in this offense and at this school, you need the tight end to play a role. And, did Bo Collins have a catch Saturday? Maybe one or two, but he was kind of a non-factor.
Yeah, he was not. I think he had one, maybe. But
yeah, but Harrison and Mitchell did, and Jaden Thomas had a couple of catches that he turned. His yards after the catch are probably the best on the team in terms of he's a load to bring down when he catches the ball on the edge, and they'll get Faison back, and they get to work all these things out against against the schedule that's really poor for the most part. Florida State is a train wreck, and so they have no choice but to run the table and to look impressive doing it. And so they did what listen, Saturday was going to be a miserable experience for Notre Dame fans no matter what, because if we lost or played poorly, we were going to worry that, the Freeman era was, coming to an end soon, and that all hope was lost and it was a disaster. And if they won the way that they did, we're just left even more pissed off than we were before the game started about what happened with Northern Illinois. So it was a no-win situation for fans, but you've got to do, when you're on the team and when you're the coaching staff, you have to do what they did, and they did. So
no, they did. They turned it around. It's a big win. It's a right step forward. But kind of back to the points that you were alluding to, Coffee. There were some times where Leonard clearly missed guys wide open. I mean, there was one where he ended up running for the first down. He got it. But man, there was a guy that was behind the defense that was sitting there at the 5-yard line, kind of like, hey, I'm right here. And I don't know if Riley saw him, but then didn't have confidence that he should throw it, and had more confidence in running it. I don't know. I mean, we don't know that, but clearly there were some guys that were wide open that never got the football. And That
he,
obviously
he
happened in the Northern Illinois game as well.
he seems hesitant to step up in the pocket and try to deliver the ball to a receiver that's open. Now, his ability to run is going to make linebackers and maybe safeties more tentative because they have to account for him. They have to account for
Yeah.
his feet.
Yep.
And his ability to move around in the pocket while keeping the attention of those linebackers is going to allow tight ends and receivers to get open. And as I said before, if Notre Dame is going to win a playoff game, if not make the playoffs in the first place, Riley Leonard is going to have to show the ability to make that 20-plus yard throw, because teams that with high quality defenses, and I'm thinking of, like, I don't want to look beyond Miami considering what happened last week, but looking at a team like Louisville that is a high quality defense, I mean, they will be very willing to stack 8 guys in the box and say, hey, you want to run, you go ahead and run, because we're going to put man on man for your receivers because we're going to wager you can't get them the ball. And they have this week to show potential defenses that that card is in Leonard's deck and that he can play it. Because if all we're looking at is dinks and dunks within 15 yards, a good defense is going to make Notre Dame pay for that. And
Yeah.
if,
Well,
if it's a case where they say, Mike, as you were saying, or like Leonard's going to play until his health or the game situation demands a change is made. But I would rather they show that Leonard can actually do that, because the alternative would be if you're swapping in Angeli for a series or two, I mean, you're basically transmitting that, yeah, we want to pass now. So now it's time for the linebackers to take a step back. And
Yeah.
The unpredictability is what I want the offense to actually hang on to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's clear that they're going to do kind of this working forward. One thing I noticed, Ed, I don't know if you saw this, but and I'm going to get a little technical here, but in Major League Baseball, pitchers, one of the analytics they use is spin rate on the baseball. So you have to have a certain spin rate in order to be able to effectively throw 3 pitches. For a quarterback, that spin rate is the speed at which the ball turns, which equates to how quickly it gets to the receiver. And with Angeli, you can see that he clearly has a good spin rate because he puts it right on the dime. And it seems like Leonard at the moment, I don't know why, but just at least at the moment, his spin rate's not all the way there, and it kind of floats a bit. He doesn't really kind of zip it in there with kind of confidence. And that could very well be that he's just not 100% comfortable. As Coffee was saying, he doesn't trust himself to step up when a guy's open, make the throw, knowing that he's going to get hit the second he releases the football. But regardless, that is what they got to get to. They got to get to a point where we're going to get 50-plus yards from him on the ground for sure every game. The question is, can he throw for 200 yards in the air to offset, to keep the defenses honest? And if he can't, we're going to be in some trouble, because the elite defenses, the better defenses, are just going to put 8 in the box and dare us to throw it deep.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that he's got a lot to work on. Obviously, the stepping up part is important. I think he's got a little bit of the, issue that, Lamar Jackson has, who's an excellent quarterback. But when there's a little bit of, when it's crunch time, he's a little bit too willing to give up on a play and take off. And I think Riley Leonard has a little bit of that, because that is something he's comfortable with, and it's the strength of his game. And you got to work those things out against the Northern Illinois and the Purdue's and the Miami Ohio's of the season before you come up to a better defense, like Mike Coffey says, against Louisville. I will say, though, that when you think back, I mean, the elite quarterbacks in the game, miss guys that are open. I mean, I can think of, what was it now, 2 years ago, and the last couple of years of Aaron Rodgers' time in Green Bay, they flanged out pretty early in the playoffs. And I know especially that last game that he played for Green Bay was so egregious. Twice, I think, when they were trying to tie the game at the end or maybe go ahead. he had Alan Lazard in the middle of the field and he threw it deep and threw an interception or threw an incompletion, and he had, so and so on the side. So I think pressure, both game pressure and, rushing pressure, sack type pressure, impacts different guys different ways. But I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think that we've seen. I don't think we've seen all that Riley Leonard can do. In other words, I see room for improvement, but I also don't. I also don't think that improvement is impossible. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just who he is, and we'll learn that. A downfield passing game, a tight spiral. I also think that he may still be feeling the effects of hitting his right hand on the helmet. And
a little bit. I mean, he's been
might be affecting his spin rate.
He's fighting some injuries. There's no doubt about it. But I do think that you're right about that. Look, ultimately what you want is Riley being comfortable checking off his progressions. So when he steps back, he reads the flat, he reads the down and out, he reads the post, and if after the third read it's not there, boom, you tuck it and run. It just seems like he's not comfortable going through all three progressions, and he's kind of like, after the second one, tucking it and running because he's like, I need some room to run. Let me get out of this. I don't know. I tend to agree with you, though. I think that over the next couple games, we're going to have to push the limits on his ability to orchestrate an air game a little bit more than what we got right now. Because if we can accomplish that, then you got a massive dual threat that's going to be very difficult for defenses to defend and gives us the upper hand. I mean, I think clearly what we saw Saturday is we have two guys in the backfield, not one. We got two guys that in the open field can take it to the house. And I think Jeremiah Love definitely has the notch above at the moment, even though I think Jadarian has a great instinct to himself. But Jeremiah Love right now is reading all the holes perfectly. And man, he once he gets going, he is a tough guy to bring down. And that separation is huge. So anytime you got a guy that is a threat, anytime he breaks the line of scrimmage, it certainly takes some pressure off of Leonard. The question is, can Leonard take the pressure off of those guys? Can he orchestrate enough of an air game to complement those guys so that they do get that one-on-one single broken tackle and boom, they're gone? I don't know, Coffee. I mean, I think that ultimately at the end of the day here, we're going to see a very detailed first quarter approach of a heavy dose of Leonard run the football, get a separation on the scoreboard of 2 scores, then start working on this stuff.
Well, I certainly also, I did do my research this time to find out that Miami is averaging 11 points per game on offense, and on defense, they're giving up like close to 6 yards a carry to offensive running backs and almost 200 yards on the ground every game. I realize that's not necessarily conducive to getting Leonard going on his passing game, but I agree with you from the standpoint that I think it's important for them to establish a cushion, let the defense keep doing its work, because certainly Miami's offense doesn't look like anything to write home about, at least not so far. And then take the opportunity to try to get some of those plays in. Because, I mean, against Louisville is no time to like go to the lab and, try to figure something out. I mean, you need to go into Louisville with an established plan that not only do you know will work, but also gives you the best opportunity to win. To do that, you have to force them to account for as many things as possible, one of which has to be a Riley Leonard who can complete passes downfield. Because if you get through Miami, and we're hoping for a win, which is good, but if you get through there and you come to the realization that this guy just does not have the accuracy beyond 20 yards, well, now you have a whole new offensive game plan you have to put together, because you're not going to beat Louisville with a guy who can't throw beyond 20 yards. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to learn a lot, obviously, this Saturday. But one of the nice things that we did have an opportunity to see was some of the backups
Oh yeah.
in the second half, and a couple of guys really, man, did they, especially Urlacher. I mean, man, did he live up to his name? But he looked like he was shot out of a cannon. I mean, holy cow, does that kid have some closing speed?
No doubt.
I
Absolutely.
for whatever reason, he reminds me of Zibikowski, but almost even a little bit faster, if that's
Mhm.
possible. I mean, he's a tough nose, stocky, maybe on the shorter side of things, but man, does he have a nose for the football. And it just seemed like he was not what you thought in a freshman and some of the plays that he made. But I think that was a really good sign, just seeing some backups make some serious plays.
Especially
And
considering that they were playing against Purdue. Purdue played their starters almost the entire game.
yeah,
So,
almost, but
I mean,
but
granted, they're not, not a fantastic team, but it's not like when you ordinarily see backups on backups and they're getting experience, but not. They were playing against Purdue's best players, which is certainly going to give them a
yeah,
better level of experience they would have otherwise gotten.
yeah, it
Well,
just
didn't I
looks
hear in the
good.
Friday press conference when Ryan Walter was asked sort of why he had Card in, all the way to the end, and he said something like, "Obviously, we need the practice" or something like that. I mean, you know, um, but okay, I'm going to go on a little mini sort of rant here, and like I know that that Brad Nestler and Gary Danielson are pissed off that they're doing Notre Dame Purdue instead of the SEC game of the week now. That they've been
Yeah, right.
relegated to this stuff. Okay, but can these guys just like spend like 5 minutes preparing for this
Yeah.
for this assignment? I mean, first of all, like I understand that the game was a blowout, okay? But the people that are watching the game, they don't want to hear about the three guys in Gary Danielson's wedding or whose basement
Right.
he lived in when he was a student at Purdue, okay? And they don't want to hear, Brad Nestler's, clear anti-Notre Dame bias kind of poke through as he grudgingly realizes that this is going to be a blowout when he was, rubbing his hands together with glee, thinking that he was going to see Notre Dame lose it for a second week in a row. And also, do you think that they could figure out a way to like mention the fact that literally the sons of two first ballot Hall of Famers were on the field for Notre Dame at the same time? Do you think they even, I mean, how do you say the name Urlacher
Yeah, not
without
bring it up.
saying who his
Yeah,
dad is?
yeah,
And then how do you say, how do you talk about Bryce Young without talking about who his dad is?
yeah.
I mean,
No, you're right.
finally, they made a reference to what's the other, the one that reference that everybody always makes, of course, if they do, if they know anything about Notre Dame football, oh well, I'll think of it. But who's there's another sort of connection there that they did mention. But I mean, it was just so. Oh, and Nestler, like at least on two occasions that I caught, he called a first down where he hadn't even realized that because of a penalty, the play had only gone past the original line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
That they were
I
still
saw that.
short of the
Yeah.
first down by 6
Yeah.
or 7 yards. That's just like
Right.
you're just not paying attention. So
No.
again, I don't know. I kind of I'm always watching announcers and I'm trying, it's just kind of my thing to see, if they're good at their jobs. And I just thought that, these guys just kind of mailed it in, and are just basically bitter that they had to do a game like this instead of Georgia, Tennessee or whatever. So
Well, I lucked out. I got to watch the game in an Irish bar in the Ohio City section of Cleveland, so I couldn't hear anything that they were saying. So it sounds like I missed precisely Bupkis. So
yeah, you did
Yeah,
not.
there you go.
You did not miss anything.
No, you didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Look, I mean, what do you do when the score is 28-0 at halftime? I mean, your producers meeting with them at halftime, trying to figure out what kind of names, what kind of stories they can come up with in the second half. But
Well, that's my
I
point.
agree with
Like you come up with things about, you do your
you.
homework,
Yeah, I
come up with
agree with you.
things
They
about-
could have talked
you come
about
up with
interesting things
the
about the
players and the coaches
teams,
on the field,
Yes.
not your
Yeah,
personal
you got fans
experiences.
watching the game, not historians want to know about Gary Danielson.
Well,
I mean, I appreciate the apartment that he lived in, but it's got absolutely nothing to do with anything.
I mean, we heard more about his wife in the
Right.
broadcast than we did about Kennedy
Yeah.
Urlacher or Bryce Young. You know, like, I mean, whatever.
Yeah, it is what it is. Well, anyways, let's kind of pivot to what we kind of assume is going to happen here. I think all three of us, I'm going to go on record, are going to say we're going to win Saturday. But I guess the big, huge question is, go ahead and give me a score, Coffee. But do you think that there will be some progress made with the passing game at the end of the day?
I certainly hope so. I mean, the fact that we've gone through 3 games so far and we're still, I don't know if there's suddenly going to be an epiphany on Leonard's part or what. I mean, it's certainly possible. I mean, maybe he'll feel more comfortable from getting banged up 2 weeks prior. My guess is that Miami's going to score 10 points. I think right now in our prediction contest, I've got Notre Dame scoring 42. So I'm willing to go with that as my actual prediction. I certainly hope it doesn't go as haywire as it did 2 weeks ago. So 42-10.
Ed, what do you think?
Well, you know, I don't coach this team and I don't play on this team, so I could say things like, you know, I'm going to be more interested in what Louisville and Georgia Tech do this weekend, because, you know, Louisville has played Austin Peay and Jacksonville State, so we have no idea what they have. But I think Georgia Tech is a pretty good sort of measuring stick, and I'll be, you know, paying probably closer attention to that game, and just hoping that, you know, Notre Dame wins. I mean, I think that I think Chuck Martin is a pretty good coach. He's been there for 10 years now.
Yeah.
I think the game means a lot to him. Miami has fielded some pretty good teams the last 3 or 4 years, and have performed pretty well in the MAC. From what I haven't researched them at all, but from what Mike Coffey said earlier, it sounds like they're pretty underwhelming this year. And I don't think they've won yet. I think they've had, you know,
Yeah, they're 0-2, but they played Cincinnati
they played
and
some good teams. Yeah,
Northwestern and Cincinnati. So two
Right.
two decent
two
teams.
decent teams. Yeah,
Yeah.
two power teams. But
Yeah.
so I'll say, you know, I think there'll be a little bit of a. I think this is just going to be sort of one of those years that's sort of up and down. So I'm going to say there's going to be a little bit regression that's going to make us all annoyed and ticked off, you know, going into Louisville. And, you know, Notre Dame's going to win 30-14.
Yeah.
And it's
Wow,
not
it's
gonna be-
amazing.
Yeah.
So we're 1 point off. I was going to say 30-13.
Okay, well,
All right, so here you and I are right back at, you know, I do think that, well, first and foremost, I do think there's some significant injuries. I think that's going to be an issue. You can't lose 2 guys like that on the offensive side of the ball and not have some issues. So it's going to take us a while to get that squared away. I do think that we're going to run the football in the first half. And I think we're going to end up separating ourselves by literally just running the football, because I think we're going to find success with it. As Coffee mentioned, they're giving up six yards a carry. To me, that translates into 1 or 2 breaks by our backs for a touchdown. So I think we're going to be up a couple scores at halftime. But I think from there, it's going to get really interesting to see if we can get Riley into a comfortable situation where he makes some really good reads, delivers some really good throws, and then really builds on some confidence so that we can go into Louisville with a much bigger, wider game plan to implement against them. So those are the things I'm kind of hoping for. But I tend to agree with you. I think that the trap that you fall into is, yeah, Marcus Freeman can take the team and put him on his back and operate it at 110% for that week of practice and go blow out Purdue. But you can't operate at 110% for 15 weeks. That just isn't going to happen. And so you've got to put some processes in place that allow you to just hyper focus on the processes, which then turn out the consistent play. And I think that's where our challenge is going to come into, because as you said, Ed, we're going to fall back into that regression of, all right, we're not all hyped up because we got our ass kicked by Northern Illinois. Now we're back to, okay, can we do this without the hype? Can we just execute based off of execution? So that's going to be interesting. And I think that will be a struggle for Notre Dame this year. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs, you know, the highs and the lows. And, usually by the end of the third game, you know what you got. You pretty much know what kind of football team you have. You start to formulate that identity if there is one. And it just seems like we're going to kind of struggle a bit here until we can ready the ship and be more consistent. And that's going to come down to the consistency in the passing game.
Yeah.
And it's,
I don't know. I don't know if it's going to continue, but so far, Texas A&M is holding up their end of the bargain.
yeah,
We need them to, play well
Yep.
all year. We need to beat Louisville, and then they finish with just 2 or 3 losses. We need USC to rip Michigan on Saturday.
Yeah.
I can't believe for the second out of the second weekend of 3, we're going to be rooting for USC probably. They still need help, and they have to be dominant.
Yeah.
If they can. So hopefully, I hope you and I are wrong, Mike. And I do think Mike Coffey is right, because I think that the thing that was most encouraging to me about Saturday actually was not the offensive output, which was great, but the defense looked like it just played with more purpose.
Yeah, it did.
More passion, more energy,
more anger. They definitely did.
They were dominant. They weren't.
Yeah.
The only reason there wasn't a shutout is because Urlacher knocked his fellow safety over or whatever. I mean, and that long sort of breakaway play or whatever, broken play that went for 50 yards or something. But
right.
But besides that, and I think you're going to find you found something in Traore, Boubacar. Was sort of there was kind of a little unveiling for him. They need Oben to start contributing more. He made at least a play or 2 or a play and a half. With Botelho out, they've got to get something from those guys. But I still think that they're going to need to win a couple games before this is all over, just because they literally we literally do not allow the other team to score. Period.
Yeah.
Win a couple.
Well,
games.
yeah. Let's hope for the best. I'd like to see some real high level execution on offense, and that would put us all in much better ease going into Louisville. But you hate to see some of those gaps still exist at the end of this game, because I do think Louisville's the kind of team that could expose some of that. So we'll see.
We know they'll probably have the best team speed.
Yeah.
Probably better than A&M of any team that we've played so far.
Yep, some elite athletes at some elite positions, but not real deep. But yeah, I agree. Some playmakers.
Also a pretty sophisticated scheme.
Yeah.
Passing game wise.
He's a good coach. Yeah. No doubt.
No doubt.
All right, good deal. We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. For Ed Jordanek, Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Bremer. Thanks for listening.